Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, the 10th of March, 2015, and I thought it was time for a walk around the homestead, give you an update on what we've done, and tell you about what we're going to do. So let's begin with the driveway. The day will come that we're going to have the entire yard fenced, and when that happens, we want to have a double gate system on the driveway. So it's almost like an airlock. So there'll be a gate right here, and there'll be a gate closer to the house. There we are. So the idea is that you come in through this gate, the other gate's already closed, and it's an exclusion zone. So you can confirm that there are no animals out and about that'll get loose through an open gate. Of course, that only works if the entire property is fenced, which is the idea. We eventually want to have free-range dogs in addition to the free-range ducks and chickens, so that the dogs can range and deal with some of the smaller varmints that might want to compete with customers for what we produce. Alright, looking this way, these are the permanent beds that we started last fall. Last November, these beds got about 1.5 feet of well-manured hay and straw and leaves, and that's going to break down and it's going to become just a wonderful thing to plant into. Here you're looking at where the grow boxes used to be. We determined that our gardening activities were highly inefficient because they were so spread out. And so we took up all the boxes, we've moved them over next to the house. I'll show you that in a minute. And what we're going to put out here instead, we're going to do some waterworks. So there's just a bit of a slope. I don't even know if it registers on this video, but we're looking upslope. And the slope falls diagonally across the yard, and the low point is the end of the driveway. And so we want to do some water catchment off the roof, rig up a pump so that we can pump that into a pool at the highest elevation, and then we can snake that water down the slope of the land. And instead of putting annuals up here, we're going to focus this area on small bushes. So elderberries, probably, I don't know if we'll do any more blueberries out here. We got plenty of places we're putting blueberries in, but the idea is to have plants that you don't have to go through the whole replanting thing every year. That's what a perennial is. Okay. So I just defined a word I believe you already knew. So we'll walk over here. Apologize for how shaky this is. This is my new iPad mini, and I'm just figuring out how to use this stuff. And I don't know how to pause it without losing the entire video. So right here, we're looking at all of these posts that just went in yesterday. That is where the tall spindle apple orchard is going to go. So 140 trees on 1/10 of an acre, planted 3 feet apart, and a tree that's and it's going to be 10 or 11 feet tall. So a tree that tall and skinny needs support to keep from falling over. And so running amidst those posts will be 5 strands of high tensile wire. We'll secure half-inch electric conduit to those posts to become the vertical supports to which we will fix the trees. We'll walk in for a closer look. Walk in. That's how this is manual zoom, ladies and gentlemen. We're zooming in a very jerky manner. So these posts are spread 30 feet apart. Those are 12-foot posts, 6-inch diameter, stuck in the ground, 3 feet. We had a crew out yesterday. I threw up a very short 20-second video clip yesterday that showed you the skid steer tractor that had the attachment. From what we've read, pounding the posts in results in the most secure establishment of those posts. Now, walking over here to look at the front 40, if you can just make it out between those T-posts, we have wooden posts that we've just put in, and you can more clearly see the supports. That is the support structure for the muscadine trellis. We started growing muscadines last year, and we didn't think that they'd grow big enough to train. We tied them up the green T-posts, and this year some of them will grow large enough that they'll need those wires to climb on. So as those muscadines come out of dormancy here by May at the latest, we really need to get those wires up. Of course, I've shown you this before. These are the raspberries that we put in last year. I'm going to trim these back. We've got some promocanes and floricanes out here, but we're going to manage these raspberries so everything's growing on a promocane, because we've got staggered harvest dates as it is. We don't need the same bush spending energy twice, although that's part of the attraction in some instances. But the idea when we developed this was that we would use these apple trees to form a wind and sunscreen to create a more favorable microclimate for these raspberries. And so I don't know if we'll order more raspberry bushes this year, just because we're running up to this little thing we like to call the budget. But we can now do so without worrying about the equipment coming in and doing any damage. By the way, I do want to show you this because I think it's good to know. So these apple trees we put in the ground last March. It's the last weekend of March last year. And I was concerned that the equipment that the crew was going to use to pound these posts in, that it would be too tight, and that some of our trees would incur some damage. I mean, look at this. Those trees are just 3 feet apart, and not a scratch. They did such a great job. I really thought I was going to lose 5 or 6 trees just with that skid steer operating out here. They might have tore up a little bit of ground, but they did not injure any trees. So here's compost stage 1. We've got a hay rack set up for the cows, and they've been feeding there all winter long, and this pack has developed around that hay rack. And just the other night, took the tractor and I forked hay, all of this well manured straw. Apparently Liddy and the rooster are having a conversation right there. I don't know what it's about, but they don't like each other. They've been yelling at each other. There we go. I'm sorry, that's not a rooster, that's a hen. It's one of the new hens. So it's been a while since I've put any footage up of the pigs. You can see that black guinea hog now has the physical dimensions of Caleb, our Great Pyrenees guardian, livestock guardian. And both hogs have an expiration date. We've scheduled an appointment for them at the abattoir on the 8th of April. Boy, you put it that way, it sounds like they're going in for a petit mani, doesn't it? And there, of course, is Claire. We have had her dried off now for about 6 weeks. We do dearly hope that she's with calf, and we hope she delivers before the end of the month. That's when we bought her last August, that's what the farmer said we should expect. And so we've been taking care of her, drying her off, because that's what you do. Apologize for those barking dogs. You know, sometimes they bark to do their job, and sometimes it's kind of a nuisance barking. They're just talking. So these posts that you're looking at, those also went in the ground yesterday. We realized that now that we're feeding off of the big round bales, we want the ability to put up 2 seasons worth of hay at a time for the animals. That's just good practice, and so that's the footprint of these posts. It's 36 feet by 14 feet, and eventually we may put a hard roof on there, but initially we're just going to do a soft roof, whether it's a tarp or a canvas roof, and canvas sides that we secure to the posts. And I didn't show you this at the other end, but here are the supports for these muscadine, for the tall spindle orchard. So there's your 9-foot post, and at the outside of that we've got 8-foot posts. Those are sunk in the ground about 2.5 feet, and then you've got your bracing. And so when we run the wire, we'll run the wire from the middle, coming out both ways, and we'll anchor it on these posts. The last thing I'll show you is what we did with all the grow boxes. So right there's our blueberries, and just to the north of those, but not shaded by them, are a bunch of grow boxes. And this is eventually going to be a spot we put a greenhouse or a hoop house, and we'll also put a nursery area over here where we grew the tomatoes last year. And what's going to be nice about that is that's going to be the hub of our market gardening activity. So once you get out of the winter months and you don't have to have the seed propagation going on inside the house, and when you've got a greenhouse that you can keep the temperature regulated for at least a small section of it, everything that we need to manage soil blocks, everything we need to do to propagate any kind of a cutting will be done right here. That'll make it very convenient. Which brings me to why we moved the grow boxes. Because now the kitchen garden, everything that we're producing for animals, for personal use, you're looking at it. There it is, right there. Those grow boxes plus those grow boxes account for 2/3 of the grow boxes that were originally out in front of the house, scattered hither and yon. Because we've been adding mixes and stuff to those grow boxes over a couple of seasons, we started to increase the levels. So those are the 6-inch, the 2x6s that we had been adding to these 2x4 bases, so they're all stacked up, and we'll probably put them away and start adding them back in next year. That mound is all of the contents of the soil boxes. So these are just frames that we picked up, and the corners are staked in so we can pound them into the ground and they'll stay put. It makes it very easy to pick them up, and over time they'll decay and we'll need to replace them, and they'll come out of the ground real easy. And so I went around with the tractor and scraped up what had been the contents of those boxes. This little mound, this is the finished compost that we only turned once. Last July, Gabby forked out all of the cow and goat manure from the stalls, and we just let it sit over there off the side of the building there. And I turned it once with the tractor just when I moved it, and other than that have not touched it. And you can see how well finished that is, and it's better than it looks on the surface. On the surface you see a bunch of leaves. That was the last bit that I scraped up, but this is finished and it's ready to go, and I'm looking forward to see what grows with it. Last thing I'll show you, well, I've got two things I'll show you, but so these are the seedlings that we started on the 21st of January. So they're coming up on 6 weeks old. You're looking at red Russian kale, you're looking at 3 different kinds of broccoli, and red cabbage. And they're small enough in number that we're just bringing them out to start hardening them off, and we'll keep an eye on the weather. And when we get to the point that we think we're done with really cold weather and they've been hardened off sufficiently, we'll bring them outside. We'll plant them in a box like this. This is an adaptation of Mel's mix from Square Foot Gardening. So with Square Foot Gardening, the mix consists of equal parts of peat moss, a soil compost mixture, and either vermiculite, coarse sand, or perlite. We use vermiculite because that's just what's available in bulk at the feed store we go to. And the other thing, taking an idea out of Elliot Coleman's new organic grower, we add in a little bit of lime to raise the pH, and what he calls his base fertilizer mix, which consists of colloidal phosphate, green sand, and blood meal. So the last thing I'll show you, because this is all about before and after. This is kind of like going down to Bayonne, New Jersey, and taking some shots there and putting into the tourist film. This is not the prettiest part of the farm by any stretch, but I want to show it to you because we hope that the before and after imagery in the next couple of months or so will be striking. So this is implement row. The idea is that we're going to have space for the tractor at the end of that structure we're putting in for the hay storage, and all of the implements for the tractor are right here, and we're going to cover those in something that looks an awful lot like a caterpillar tunnel. That's where you have a hoop with a fabric that goes over the top. Yeah, what I really wanted to show you is how much the topsoil has washed out through here. This has happened because of our neglect. Two things. So we did not rake up the leaves in the fall any of the years that we've been here, and so those leaves have been allowed to remain in place on the ground, and it has smothered the grass that was growing here when we first moved here, coming up on 3.5 years ago. So with the grass no longer growing, that had an awful lot to do with stemming the flow of the water that rushes down this slope when it rains hard, and also we've got 3 downspouts on that gutter system that adds a lot of water to the mix. And you can see right here, right in the middle of the frame, you can see where the washout's been even more severe. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put in some swales, and we're going to find some shade-loving perennials to put back here, plant into the swales, and the swales will catch the water, and the growing system out here will be irrigated with the runoff that comes both from upslope and also the downslope, the downspouts. The other thing that we want to do, since that is our kitchen garden, we want to be personally more resilient and more self-sufficient. A part of that is being secure in water. So while we did the work to install underground water so that we can irrigate almost every square inch of our property, what we also want to do is make sure that if we get into an exceptional drought, we can at least feed ourselves. And so in the coming months, we're going to do some water catchment on this side of the house, and our goal is to irrigate the kitchen garden using only water that we catch. We think that's a good goal, and we're going to pursue it. So with all that, this is what the homestead looks like on Tuesday, the 10th of March. I look forward to showing you some updates to this as the season goes on. And happy gardening until then.